Does anybody know what it is? Yes, ma'am.
You manage the finances, you make sure the books are right.
That's one of 18 major jobs that the comptroller has. Comptroller is an old French word. It means the person who keeps the king's purse. And in 1859, the state of Maryland and many other states in the 1840s had financial problems, and the comptroller was put there to protect the public from rapacious governors and treasurers who were stealing the state's blind. And this is the second most important vote you're going to cast in 2014, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to tell you why. Maryland has a strange government in that our governor has broad constitutional powers, and so doesn't our comptroller. The comptroller doesn't work for the governor, he works for the taxpayers. It's a separate, elected, constitutional position in the state. It's not appointed by the governor. The main purpose of the comptroller is to collect taxes, but every penny that is spent in the state of Maryland has to go something called the Board of Public Works. Any contract $200,000 or more has to be approved by a three-person panel called the Board of Public Works. It's the governor, the comptroller, and the treasurer. So if we could get two sane people on the Board of Public Works, we could stop the lunacy that's going on in Maryland. Amen. We are not in my lifetime going to wrest control of the General Assembly. But the General Assembly only meets 90 days a year, usually, instead of having special sessions, but usually 90 days a year. And when it is not in session, this Board of Public Works can change any spending bill. So if the legislature says we're going to spend X, they can spend more, they can spend less. The legislature is kind of a rubber stamp for the governor. It's also the vice chair of the pension fund. Now, one of the reasons I got involved last time in running was Maryland had a deficit at that time of $18.5 billion in its pension funding. We had been stealing money from the pension for 10 years then, now it's 12 years. We also had an unfunded health care for our retirees fund. At that time was over $16 billion was unfunded. And you put these two things together, it was $35 billion, more than the state budget at that time. And it has gotten worse. The comptroller touches you in ways that you don't realize. If you buy gasoline, the comptroller regulates the fuel industry. If you buy alcohol, the comptroller regulates the alcohol industry in the state. If you buy tobacco of any kind, the comptroller regulates that. The comptroller has 18 constitutional and statutory and regulatory jobs. It is invisible. People know it's the tax collector, and they kind of ignore it because who thinks of accounting as romantic? Do you remember the last time somebody bounded into your office and say, I want to tell you about the romance of accounting? You'd call the police. But it's one of those critical jobs like flossing that nobody ever does, but we're told we should do. It's one of those things that when it works right is great, and when it doesn't work right, it's very bad. We have not had an elected Republican comptroller since 1919. And this is the most powerful financial elected position in any state in the union. So if you want to really make a difference in Maryland, I suggest, support your local delegate candidate, support your local state senator candidate, but for God's sakes, get out and support your gubernatorial and comptroller candidate, because they are the people that can turn this ship around before it runs further on the rocks. Now, I mentioned about the pension and health care liabilities. What has happened in the last 2 years? Well, in the last 2 years, my personal investments for retirement have done pretty well. I'm looking forward to the time when I can eat tuna fish instead of cat food because I will have enough money to do so. But the state pension has gone the opposite way. They have cronyism. They have hired over 200 financial managers to manage their money poorly. And now instead of being $18.5 billion underfunded, we are $20.5 billion underfunded. And the health care for our retirees has grown from about $16 billion to estimates range from $17 to $19 billion. Why is this important? One of the reasons it's important is Maryland borrows money.